Most people read the wedding at Cana and walk away confused. Some think Jesus sinned by providing more wine to people who were already drinking. Others think he was being rude to his mother when he said, "What does this have to do with me?" Some try to make it about obedience or faith or trust, but honestly most people just don't know what to make of it. They see a miracle about water turning into wine and move on. They miss that this moment contains one of the most sophisticated prophetic revelations in all of Scripture. Jesus' first miracle was not just a sign, it was a complete preview of his death, burial, and resurrection compressed into a single act. Let me show you what's actually happening. At a wedding in Cana they run out of wine. This is a social disaster in that culture. Mary comes to Jesus and simply states the problem. They have no wine. What happens next is where people get confused because Jesus gives her what seems like a strange response. Jesus says, "What does this have to do with me?" In Greek this is timoikisoi. In Hebrew this phrase is ma livalek. This is not a random statement. It is a direct quote from 1 Kings 17:18. Let me give you the context. The widow of Zarephath had asked the prophet Elijah for help during a famine. Elijah performed a miracle. He multiplied her oil and flour so she would not starve. But then her son became sick and died. The widow said to Elijah, "What have you to do with me, O man of God? You have come to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my son." Jesus is quoting this exact phrase to Mary. He is giving her a warning. If you push me into public ministry right now, it will expose sin and it will cause the son to die. But Mary heard scripture without understanding the prophecy. Like most Jews in those days, including the Pharisees and the apostles themselves, she missed what the passage was actually warning about. She likely thought he was going to multiply what little wine they had left. Just like Elijah multiplied the widow's oil and flour, she heard the reference to the prophet performing provision, but she did not grasp that the widow's words were about exposing sin and causing death. Jesus continues, "My hour has not yet come." People read this as a simple statement about timing. It is far deeper than that. The Hebrew word for hour is sh. The root of this word means to be gazed upon, to be looked at, to be brought into public view. Jesus is not just saying my time has not arrived. He is saying the moment when all eyes will be fixed on me has not come. The moment when I will be publicly exposed has not arrived. And that moment leads directly to the cross. Zechariah 12:10 prophesied they will look on him whom they have pierced. The hour is the hour of being gazed upon in both glory and death. Mary is asking Jesus to make himself visible, to show the signs, to reveal God's favor resting on him. Jesus is warning her that public exposure leads to rejection. Rejection leads to the cross. Mary responds by turning to the servants and saying, "Do whatever he tells you." This is not casual advice. This is a direct quote from Genesis 41:55. During the Great Famine, Pharaoh told the starving people, "Go to Joseph. Whatever he tells you, do." Mary is making a prophetic declaration. She is identifying Jesus as Joseph. She understands the typology. Let me show you why this matters. Genesis 49:22 records Jacob's blessing over Joseph. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The Hebrew is ben porat, son of fruitfulness, fruitful vine. Joseph is prophetically identified as the vine. And what does a vine produce? Wine. Joseph was the beloved son of his father Jacob. He was given visible signs of favor, the coat of many colors. He had prophetic dreams that his brothers would bow to him. He had 12 brothers who would eventually submit to his authority, but first they rejected him. They were jealous of the coat because the coat proved their father's favor rested on Joseph, not on them. They plotted to kill him. They stripped him of his robe. They threw him into a pit, which is death imagery in Hebrew thought. They sold him for 20 pieces of silver. He was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. He was imprisoned with 2 criminals. One was saved, the cupbearer. One was condemned, the baker. This detail is prophetically loaded. The cupbearer represents wine. The baker represents bread, manna, the very thing the Pharisees gave Jesus as proof they were children of the covenant. Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, they said in John 6:31. But the baker dies. The manna is dead. The old covenant claim is condemned. The cupbearer lives. The wine survives. The blood brings life. Then Joseph was exalted to Pharaoh's right hand. He was given a new name and a Gentile bride. He provided bread and grain during the famine. His brothers came to him for provision, but they did not recognize him at the first encounter. At the second encounter, Joseph revealed himself. "I am Joseph." Reconciliation came through the one they had betrayed. Genesis 50:20 gives us the gospel in one sentence. You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good to bring it about that many people should be kept alive. Every detail of Joseph's life is a prophetic pattern pointing to Jesus, the beloved Son of the Father, 12 apostles who would bow to him, visible signs of God's favor that provoke jealousy, stripped of his garments, descended into death, sold for silver by Judas, falsely accused before the Sanhedrin, crucified between two criminals where one was saved and one condemned, exalted to God's right hand, given a Gentile bride which is the church, provides living bread and wine. Israel does not recognize him at the first coming. At the second coming they will look on him whom they pierced and recognize him. The cross meant for evil became the means of salvation. But there is another layer. Joseph had a younger brother named Benjamin. In Hebrew, Benjamin means son of my right hand. Benjamin was born through his mother Rachel's death. She originally named him Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow. Jacob renamed him Benjamin, son of my right hand. He was the youngest who completed the 12 brothers. He was beloved of Jacob after Joseph was gone. Joseph revealed himself when Benjamin arrived. Jesus is both Joseph and Benjamin. He is the first and the last. Revelation 20:13. As Joseph, he is the first beloved son who was rejected and descended into death and rose to save his brothers. As Benjamin, he is the son of the right hand, born through death to sit at the Father's right hand in glory. Acts 2:33 says, he was exalted at the right hand of God. Hebrews 1:3 says he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. Hebrews 8:1 says we have such a high priest, one who is seated at the right hand of the throne. The entire Joseph and Benjamin cycle is the gospel. Rejection leads to death. Death leads to exaltation. Exaltation leads to provision. Provision leads to reconciliation. Mary knew the Joseph typology. Her song in Luke 1:46-55 called the Magnificat shows her deep scriptural knowledge. She quotes Hannah's prayer. She references multiple prophets. She understands covenant promises to Abraham. She knew Jesus was the Messiah. She traced his roots back through the patriarchs to Joseph. She saw the pattern, the beloved son, the fruitful vine, the 12 who would bow, the favor of God bringing provision and rule. But here's what Mary did not yet understand. She saw Jesus as Joseph the conquering king. She expected immediate glory, physical restoration of Israel's kingdom. She thought the pattern went straight from favor to provision to rule. She did not yet see Isaiah 53, the suffering servant who would be pierced for our transgressions. She did not understand that the Joseph pattern includes the pit and the betrayal and the death before the exaltation. She quoted from the provision phase of Joseph's story. Go to Joseph, whatever he tells you do. But that only came after Joseph went through slavery and false accusation and prison and death imagery. Mary was asking for the end of the pattern while they were still at the beginning. This is critical. The ceremonial purification jars at Cana were for washing the whole body. But Jesus says that those who have bathed, meaning those who have received his purification, only need their feet washed. They are completely clean through his work alone. The entire system of ceremonial washing becomes obsolete. Then after the foot washing, Jesus gives them the wine. Luke 20:20 records his words. This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. The proper order is water purification first, then covenant wine, then the sacrifice that validates both. At the cross, John 19:34 says blood and water poured from his side. Jesus tasted the wine. John 19:30 records his final words. It is finished. The veil in the temple tore from top to bottom. The old covenant system ended. The new covenant began. When Jesus said, "My hour has not yet come" at Cana, he meant the hour when he would properly transform the old covenant purification system through his death. The hour when his own purification would make ceremonial washing obsolete forever. The hour when water and blood would flow. The hour when the wine would become his actual covenant blood shed for many. The hour when all eyes would gaze upon him lifted up on the cross. But Mary pushed him to give a preview. And he did. He took the stone jars meant for full body washing and transformed them into wine. He showed what the cross would accomplish. Old covenant purification becoming new covenant life. But it was out of sequence. The sign came before the sacrifice. John 19:25-27 tells us Mary stood by the cross. She watched her son die. She heard the crowds shout, "Crucify him." She saw Israel reject their king, and in that moment she understood both warnings Jesus had given her at Cana. The first warning, "What does this have to do with me?" The widow's words to Elijah, You have come to bring sin to remembrance and cause the death of the Son. Mary had pushed Jesus into public ministry. The signs exposed him. Public exposure revealed Israel's sin, which was their rejection of God's anointed. That rejection led to crucifixion. The widow's prophecy was literal. The second warning, my hour has not yet come, the hour of being gazed upon. All eyes were now fixed on Jesus, on the cross, lifted up for all to see. The moment he had warned about had arrived, and it came because she had forced the preview that made him visible to a world that would reject him. Mary did not send him to death knowingly. She pushed for provision in kingdom and glory. She saw the Joseph pattern, but only the conquering king phase. She learned at the cross that the path to the throne goes through death, that provision requires sacrifice, that the Joseph pattern includes the pit before the palace. Genesis 50:20 became her reality. She meant it for good, but it led to evil that God transformed into the greatest good, the salvation of the world. The miracle at Cana was not just about helping a wedding. It was Jesus showing in compressed form what his entire ministry would accomplish. Take the old covenant system designed for purification, transform it completely, replace ritual with relationship, replace washing with his blood, replace stone jars with his body, replace temporary cleansing with permanent purification through his sacrifice. The water became wine, the jars became obsolete, the old became new, the law became grace, death became life, rejection became reconciliation. The first miracle was the Last Supper. The wedding at Cana was Golgotha in preview form. The hour Jesus warned about was the hour he would be gazed upon by all, pierced, rejected, killed, and through that death provide the wine of the new covenant. His blood poured out for the forgiveness of sins. This is what people miss when they read the story superficially. They see water turning to wine and think it is about abundance or obedience or Jesus helping people have a good time. They miss that every detail is prophetic. Every word is loaded. Every action points to the cross. Mary quoting Joseph, Jesus quoting the widow. The hour that means to be gazed upon. The ceremonial jars. The high priest who abstains from wine. The foot washing that replaces full body purification. The wine that becomes covenant blood. The preview that exposes him. The exposure that leads to rejection. The rejection that leads to death. The death that accomplishes salvation. Jesus' first miracle was also his Last Supper. The beginning showed the end. The sign revealed the sacrifice. And Mary, who pushed for the kingdom, discovered that the kingdom comes through the cross. The throne requires death first. The Joseph pattern is complete. Pit then palace. Betrayal then exaltation. Suffering then glory. Death then resurrection. Rejection then reconciliation. The beloved Son becomes the Son of the right hand. The first becomes the last. And through it all God works evil for good to bring it about that many people should be kept alive. This is the wedding at Cana. This is what everyone misses.